most vivid memory of this tragic day?
So I was only 5 at the time, so I don't have a very vivid memory, but my mom flew in from New York City 12 hours before the first plane crashed, and that weekend my grandparents had kept me while she was away, and that morning she flew in, we all had breakfast together, and my grandparents turned on the news, and everything was silent. Mom started crying, and my grandparents wouldn't let go of her. I was too young to comprehend what was happening, but now that whenever the day rolls around, I understand why my mom still won't get on a plane to this day, because it still affects our family.
So, Mr. Sundstrom, you were in D.C. at the time, so how close were you to the Pentagon?
Well, so I was working at a boarding school, which was about 3 miles from the Pentagon, so really close. My drive every day home took me on a road about 50 or 100 yards from the Pentagon. In fact, the spot where the plane impacted the Pentagon was really close. I was only 2 weeks into school, my first job out of college. I was 22 years old, and when it became clear that it was an aggressive attack, in my classes we just turned on the TV, and the students sat. I typically just stood in the corner and watched TV as it unfolded. No one really spoke, but to me the most vivid memory is watching the coverage of the Twin Towers and watching the TV and seeing little dots falling next to the tower, which at first I thought was debris, and then at one point the camera zoomed in a little bit, and I caught a very clear glimpse that in fact they were people that were jumping out of the upper stories of the buildings. They just had nowhere to go. The fire was coming up, and some people were compelled to jump, and I saw that very, very clearly. And I remember I almost fell down. It hit me so hard.
So, Mr. Bogue, I noticed there was a lot of bandanas on our lockers, I believe, last Friday. So I was just wondering what was the cause of putting the bandanas on our lockers.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Mackie, for asking. 9/11 happened to occur this year on a Friday, which was great. We had an assembly day, whatever it was. But also with the Ravenscroft Athletic Club planning a big to-do for the football game, coordinated with Claire Zaytoon and Serving Our Soldiers to create Military Appreciation Night. It's actually the Ravenscroft Athletic Club decided to buy and put all of those American flag bandanas on each upper school student's locker.
On 9/11, what's the first thing that comes into your mind?
Oh man, I remember exactly where I was. I woke up, was in Durham in law school, and turned on the TVs. I was getting ready to go to class, and I saw it was that time when the first plane had just struck the tower. And I was glued to the television from there on. My buddy's father was supposed to have been on the plane from Boston to LA to hit the second tower, but he had called the night before around midnight to say that he was going up to, sorry, he was going down to New York to see his girlfriend, so he was going to be flying out of New York. So I had to race to school, get my roommate, but I knew friends who died, people who lost loved ones. It was a pretty impactful day.
So, Mr. Flynn, you were in the relative area when the 9/11 attack occurred, so exactly how close were you?
I lived, or I worked about 10 miles from Lower Manhattan, right where the northern end of the island, the George Washington Bridge goes across and into New Jersey, and I worked right on that side of New Jersey. So, relatively close, but not in the city specifically.
So you didn't really experience any of the smoke?
I did. That we got the day of, specifically like leaving work that afternoon. You couldn't see, the plumes of smoke like across the river, but the smell. I think more than anything, I remember the smell. There was like that metallic tang in the air, and it was acrid and really biting. Like you couldn't. Being outside was awful.
Yeah. So how did it feel walking down the streets the next day?
the thing that I feel like impacted me the most was I didn't go down to the site at all because it was too much for me. So a couple months later in February, I was meeting some friends in Manhattan, and I was driving around, and I got lost, and I got stuck. I came around a corner, and there was the scene, and there were the floodlights, and there was everything kind of bearing down on the construction and the project. And I think that was kind of the first moment that really hit me, because I was right there, and I hadn't been there before. Like as close as I was, there was still some of that distance because it was on TV, and the friends of mine who worked down there got out safely, so I didn't have that emotional connection. Obviously, it hit me very hard as an American, as a human, but there was still kind of that TV distance. But that was the first time it became very real. And after that, I couldn't even go meet my friends. I just went home. Like, I didn't know how I could kind of process that and then go have fun. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then my parents came to town maybe in March, and my dad really wanted to see the site, and I still wasn't ready for it. And we went, and I probably shouldn't have because it was still kind of too raw. It was too fresh. I didn't deal with it very well. I was very overwhelmed.